So, we've seen how a learning curve table works and how it can be used to make calculations. And the way we looked at it was in terms of units. And like we said, technically production can take place in units or batches. But the difference is, for example, if we're producing things on a unit basis, you're producing one brick at a time. Every time you produce a brick, you go through the learning experience of production. But if you're producing a batch of 10 bricks all together each time, every time you produce 10 bricks, you go through the learning process 1. So things become slightly different. Now, when we're dealing with batch production, in the learning curve table, we replace the units with number of batches. So for example, let's say we're producing batches where one batch has 10 bricks, right? And the first batch took us 100 hours to make, right? We're using A to represent the time for the first batch and R for the learning rate. Let's say it's 80%. What that means is now our table, instead of having a column for units, will have a column for batches, which will follow the same pattern which we covered previously. 1, then every time we move down a row, we multiply the previous value by 2. 2, 4, 8, and so on, right? Once again, we'll have a column for average time, this time not per unit, but per batch. So the first batch took us 100 hours. And every time we move down the column for average time, we multiply the previous value by the learning rate. So 100 into 80% gives us 80. 80 into 80% gives us 64. 64 into 80% gives us 51.2. And finally, the column for total time, we multiply the number of batches with the average time per batch to find the values. So 1 into 100 gives us 100. 2 into 80 gives us 160, 4 into 64 gives us 256, and 51.2 into 8 gives us 409.6. Okay, but technically we can still express this table in terms of units as well. How? Just add a column for units to the side. How many units per batch? 10. So 1 into 10, 10, 2 into 10, 20, 4 into 10, 40, 8 into 10, 80. And we also have the corresponding average time for the number of breaks and the total time as well. So that's how we can modify the table. A couple of takeaways though is, first of all, notice that finding the total time was based on batches into average time per batch. It had nothing to do with the number of units, okay? So this is just standalone, a separate column from the table, just there for reference. What it does is it makes things easier. For example, if someone asks, how much time did the 41st to the 80th brick take to make? If we just had the normal table, it'll be difficult. But now we know 41st to 80th bricks lies between these two amounts, right? So we'll simply find the incremental time. 80 bricks took 409.6 hours in total. The first 40 bricks took 256. So the 41st to 80th bricks would have taken 409.6 minus 256, which would be 153.6. So that's the only purpose behind adding the units column. If we need to look at things in terms of units, we can now do it easily. But the table itself will be produced in terms of batches.